And United?
For United, it's about getting to the end of the season. If they can win again, there's a lot to play for. The league, obviously, they're in 13th position, so that's it's been a waste of time, the league this season. So they've got to try and do as well as they can in that, obviously, because you've still got games to play where there's full houses every single week where they go. But the Europa League's huge. Lyon in midweek and then the week after. If they can somehow, if they could win the Europa League, United, and get into the Champions League, I would like, wow, what's going on? So that would be a sort of get out of jail free card, that one.
We'll get back to Gary in just a quick second, but remember, if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification button so that you know when the next Big D video hits. And as ever, if something is on your mind, if something is bubbling up inside of you that you need to express, please express it in the comments. The Big D reads all of the comments, and he's always interested in what is on your mind. Anyway, in this clip, Gary Neville is going to be reacting to the Manchester derby, and he's not very happy. Is Gary Neville ever happy? He's like Roy Keane, just not quite as entertaining. But hey-ho, he does make some points, which are quite interesting that the Big D agrees with, but others that he doesn't. So stick around for after the clip, because the Big D is going to be giving his thoughts on what Gary had to say after today's 0-0 draw with Manchester City. Here's Gary.
I thought it was a really poor game. I think, look, there's two or three things I could say that maybe it's symptomatic of the fact that maybe there's a feeling that everyone's experiencing, that the league's done, the relegation's sorted. Maybe there's a feeling that the end of the season there's not a lot to play for, but for City, they're obviously going for Champions League, and for Manchester United, their manager is trying to establish a system and a style of play and a relationship, obviously, with his players, and also prepare for a big European game in midweek. So that's probably that, but I think symptomatic of both teams and where they're at. But then there's also a sort of bigger point of just this robotic element that we're seeing it's flooding in over this last sort of year or two. And I think it's an element of, the greatest manager, one of the greatest managers of all time, Pep Guardiola's style of play, infiltrating everybody else over the last 10 years. But then what we're seeing is almost like a sort of poor man's adaptation of it. City are obviously in a difficult moment compared to where they've been in the last few years, so they haven't got the quality of player out on the pitch to implement Pep's style. There's no David Silva, Aguero's out there, and players that we've seen in the past. But I just think on that final point, I know it's very basic to say go and win the game with 20 minutes to go. That's an instruction a manager would give a group of players, which gives them some freedom. Where's the freedom in that football match? There's none. And I can't accept that. I'm getting really angry with it, because when I say these players, these are fantastic players, by the way, but they're frightened to death to move out of their positions or do anything that might just cost them a mistake that costs them the game. So what we saw at the end of the game there was a group of players congratulating each other, smiling with each other, the managers smiling with each other, and United almost did a lap of honour. Understandably, they kept a clean sheet. That's something to be proud of, and United aren't in a great moment. But the reality is, where was the disappointment and anger that they didn't win the game? Great sides and big personalities and characters feel disappointed when they've played like that, and it's been an insipid game and they haven't won. And I think actually Bruno stands out from that, because I do think he was actually the best player on the pitch. I do think that he was someone who, to be fair, had real quality when he got the ball, but he was one amongst very few in the whole game. And I even include City's players. And look, out there on the pitch was Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, one of the greatest players we've seen in the Premier League. But I was really disappointed with that game, with the intent to try and win. And we talk about the Premier League and what it is, and some fantastic football, electric atmospheres, brilliant football, but we've just got to be careful. We've got to be careful that with analysis, with sports science, with adaptations in coaching methods, that we take away the actual freedom of football players, that kid in the playground element of the centre-back running forward, the full-back being in a centre-forward position, throwing five into the box and the kitchen sink at the end of a game to try and win, that desperation to basically win at all costs, because that is the Premier League, that is English football, getting the ball forward into players' feet as quickly as possible. Where was the one-on-ones today? I mean, yeah, there was the odd one-on-one. Garnacho, I think, had the odd chance of one-on-one, maybe. Doku did. But seriously, in a game like that, when you've got packed defences, which is not unusual, by the way, for Manchester City to face that, or even United over the years, you would have players who think, right, okay, it's a one-on-one game. It's a game whereby I've got to try and unlock the door by showing some individual brilliance. But they haven't even got the guts to do that anymore because they're frightened to death of giving the ball away, so they recycle it back through their fullback or the midfield player. And we're seeing far too much of it. And look, maybe I'm just getting frustrated at the end of a drab game, at the end of a season whereby this game isn't the most important derby in the world, and these two clubs at this moment are not having the greatest of seasons. So maybe there's an element of that, but it's creeping in, and the centre-backs rolling the foot on the ball, and goalkeepers standing on the ball, rolling the foot on the ball, waiting for someone to come to them. And I'm not having it. It's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. Yeah, I watched Barcelona do it to Manchester United in the 2009 Rome final, and it was something very special. We watched Barcelona do it for 3 or 4 years after that. We've watched Manchester City, I think when Pep Guardiola lost in his first season when he came to England, then the year after, he had a very diminutive front six that I never thought I could see win the Premier League, which was Sané, Sterling, Aguero, and then it was David Silva, De Bruyne and Fernandinho in midfield, all quite small players relatively to the Premier League sort of powerhouses that you saw. And it was exceptional to watch, the beauty of the football and the speed of the play and the excitement. And Pep's sort of what would be methodical way of playing that system and wearing teams out. But now what we've seen is that Pep's style, which he's always had, is being adapted by other teams, but in a very average manner, and it's a poor imitation of it. United are quite sort of set in their system and how they play in this sort of 3-4-3, 5-4-1 today for most of it. So, yeah, I just feel a little bit annoyed tonight because I think that when you've got 75,000 people in a stadium, some of which will be coming to Old Trafford for the first time today, watching their first Manchester derby, some of them kids, that's not representative of what any of us like. It's not representative of what those players are capable of. And we just got to make sure that we don't allow this to creep in.
Do you forgive United to the extent that they very obviously are at this stage of the season, never mind Europe, kind of marking time? And so to get through a Manchester derby intact might feel okay. That's the requirement today, just to get through intact, move on to Thursday, and that's that. And indeed, to get through to the end of the season intact and respectably.
There is an element of that. There is an element of that, Peter. But the problem is we've seen it before. We've had the sort of what would be the promise of derby wins, of stout, solid, rigid performances against good teams where we've won on the counter-attack. United have done that under Ten Hag. They've done it under Ole. They've done it under Jose. They've done it under... Yeah, they've done it under these men. We've seen this before. So what you've got is a manager at this moment in time trying to build a foundation, and I've got a lot of sympathy with him because he hasn't got the players that he wants to play this system that he's playing. So what he's doing is retreating in big games. So he gets results against City twice this season. He's got a result against Liverpool. He's got a result against Arsenal in the Cup, and Arsenal in the league. So he's had some decent results in big games. But the problem is with that, we've seen this before at United, whereby we think this doesn't lead to better things. It doesn't. You know, what United have got to do is almost lose badly playing the way that will get them back to the very top. Now, I can see why Ruben Amorim at this moment in time has gone 5-4-1 today, because he doesn't want to get a bit of a doing at home before a big game in midweek. But next season, I think that Ruben Amorim's personality is really positive. He's got real energy. He wants to play a certain way. He's just got to make sure he doesn't fall into the trap of becoming a manager who comes in, wants to play in progressive high-press football and real high energy, to thinking, well, the best way to play is on the counter-attack, because that's where Eric ended up, it's where Ole ended up, it's where Jose ended up, it's where they all ended up. The only manager that in the last 12 years here since Sir Alex left that's been able to dominate the play in the final third against big teams is Louis van Gaal. He's the only man, he really did in some big games. So, yeah, I just think we've just got to be cautious of that. But I can understand, look, the mentality of the dressing room at this moment in time. They're getting some players back from injury. He's trying to build a rapport with them and build a sort of what would be a collection of results that gives them a more positive end to the season. And the Europa League is so important. So I get it. I get it.
And United?
For United, it's about getting to the end of the season. If they can win, again, there's a lot to play for. The league, obviously, they're in 13th position, so that's it's been a waste of time, the league this season. So they've got to try and do as well as they can in that, obviously, because you've still got games to play where there's full houses every single week where they go. But the Europa League's huge. Lyon in midweek and then the week after. You know, if they can somehow, I mean, if they could win the Europa League, United, and get into the Champions League, I mean, I would like, wow, what's going on? So that would be a sort of get out of jail free card, that one, because financially, finishing in 13th, not being in Europe, is devastating from a point of view of we know where United's finances are, and the big impact, or the person who has that most impact on, is Ruben Amorim, because he doesn't then get the money to be able to reinvest in the squad into this system, which is a specialist system where he needs players who are quite unique. Wing backs, they're not 10 a penny. They're not. You know, to get the same energy system from a winger and a full-back and defensive qualities and attacking qualities is just tough. Those two positions in behind the striker are really tough to find, those types of quality of players. And then the striker themselves has got to be special, and those ones that United have got already aren't. So there's a lot of work to do. Maybe the defenders they can get away with in terms of the three. Maybe midfield with Mainu, with Mount, with Fernandes, and maybe Agati might get them through a season. But I think the front three and the wing backs, they need to change. They need to change. Now, there might be one or two, you know, Amad Diallo might be able to suit in that position or whatever, but I think there's 5 players there that need to be bought that are high quality to make Ruben Amorim a success here, because if he doesn't get 2 real high quality wing backs and 2 players in behind the front player and the front player of really high quality, I don't think he's going to succeed at United. He needs to get that sorted, and that's going to need some serious money. So that's the main thing about United winning the Europa League, to furnish the manager with some cash that he needs.
Yeah, well, he does make some interesting points, Gary, in this clip, to be fair. And that is, sometimes these footballers these days, and I've said this on other videos as well, and I've heard other professional footballers talk about this kind of thing, they forget why they are there, right? And it's not just to win football matches and all of that. They are there to entertain the fans. These players, these officials, these managers, these owners, they wouldn't be anything in football without the fans. The fans pay their hard-earned cash, and they're all working-class fans. People forget sometimes, or the people within the game forget sometimes, that football is a working-class sport. So the people go to watch these games more often than not after work, 40, 50, 60 hours per week, to go watch some of this shower of nonsense that we watch. And sometimes, like, when you watch these games, all this tippy-tappy, passing to your side, passing to your right, passing to your left, passing back to the goalkeeper, that is not entertaining. It's not entertaining. And all of this, this age of the tactics, this age of the systems, the philosophies, and all of that, it's just, all it's done is strangle the creativity from the game. The game just isn't as interesting as it used to be 15 years ago. And I do blame Pep Guardiola, to be fair. That 2009 Champions League final was a turning point in football. If Alex Ferguson was able to beat that Barcelona team, it just might have nipped in the bud this age that we're in the midst of now, of the system. Because, where's the R9s? Where's the individualists like Roberto Baggio and Alessandro Del Piero and Romario and Rivaldo and Ronaldinho and all these guys? Because it's like what Roy Keane said as well in his analysis on another video of mine, so check that out. Where's the people taking risks? There's only Bruno Fernandes, to be fair. And that's one of the things that I love about Bruno Fernandes. He's an individualist. He's one of the only ones in football at the moment. And he sticks out like a sore thumb because there's no one else like him. He's a better player than Kevin De Bruyne. He is. The fact that he's been able to be as productive in the Manchester United teams that he's been in, he's been more productive than Kevin De Bruyne, who's in a winning side. So, I won't hear anything bad said against Bruno Fernandes. He's a phenomenal player, and at the very least, he takes risks. And people say to him, "Oh yeah, but his passing accuracy is, it's 42% or so much stupid." Well, yeah, because more often than not, he's trying to through ball or a long ball to try and win the game. So we need more players that are going to go out there and try and win the game, because it costs a bloody fortune now to go to watch Man United. A fortune, and especially for fans that live outside of Manchester, you know, it's £100 a pop. By the time you pay for your transport to go down, by the time you have a couple of pints or whatever, by the time you pay for your overpriced ticket, and you pay, you know, £9 for a bloody pie and a bar of chocolate, and then you're having to watch, you know, sideway passing and passing back to the goalkeeper. It is a pain in the backside. It really is. It really is. But they forget there just seems to be a disconnection in culture in general, whether that's football, film, or music, that they are, you know, these people that are creating these entertainment platforms or these entertainment products, and that's what football is. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. And at the moment, it's not very entertaining, right? They forget why they're there, and they are there to entertain the masses. We need distraction because life can be tough for some people. Now, the Big D, you know, the Big D's all right, but the Big D's thinking about, you know, his dad. His dad's a pensioner. He's worked hard all his life, and he's done back-breaking labour all of his life to provide the Big D with an education to be able to go to university and be able to learn how to, you know, make YouTube channels and talk about this crap that he's going to watch every week. So Gary Neville's on point there. I do agree with him wholeheartedly on that point. These players need to figure out how to win matches, and there's talent on that pitch from both sides as well. I'm not just talking about Man United here. Man City, to be fair, should have beat us today. They should have done. They've got enough talent in that team to be able to beat Manchester United, the current Manchester United. So, and no one would have blamed Man United for losing today, because Man United are expecting us to be crap anyway. You know, the fans are expecting us to be crap anyway, and the media and all of that. But Man City should have beat us today, but they didn't. And, you know, I've said this before, there's just an edge taken off this game today, because Man City are not going to win the league, and Man United are not going to get relegated. So, but then again, Man City are going for Champions League football, so they should have gone for it. But yeah, no, I agree. Football's crap at the moment, just generally speaking. Even Liverpool. Yeah, they're a good side, they're a well-drilled unit, blah, 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 blah. Mo Salah's a good player, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, he's not exactly Ronaldinho, is he? And, you know, people are saying that he's had a better season than Cristiano Ronaldo. No, I can't then. At least Cristiano Ronaldo had the balls to, like, do some step-overs and take some people on and go for long-range efforts and, you know, be a movie star footballer, so to speak, you know? So, yeah. The Big D agrees with Gary Neville on that point. But, you know, it's a sign of the times. It's a sign of the times. It is what it is. Football is cyclical. And I hope, although I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, but I hope that it's going to swing back round. And it just needs one or two players to break through that just smash this system. So it doesn't matter what system you're playing in, they are just too good, and they're just too entertaining, and they just start dominating football again for 2 or 3 years, like Ronaldinho did. Ronaldinho was one of those players that you just put on the pitch and say, yeah, just crack on, pal. You know, there are players like that. I don't think there's any players in football at the moment, not even Kylian Mbappe or Vinicius Jr. are like this. I don't think. They are very much suited to a system. You know, you stick them up front, stick them on inside forward, and that's that. Jude Bellingham's a little bit tacticless, so to speak. I don't mean that as in he can't work within tactics or anything like he can, but at the very least, he does try and grab games by the scruff of the neck, a little bit like Bruno Fernandes. It's those players that the game's missing. You know, players that take the responsibility of trying to win the match. They grab the game by the scruff of the neck and they try and make things happen. And they take responsibility. The leaders, they go for it. They take that long-range effort. I always remember a story Alex Ferguson said to the players that I've heard. I wasn't in the dressing room at this point, but I've heard. I think it was Van Persie that said this in a story. It might have been Giggs. I think it was Van Persie. He said that Alex Ferguson would sit them down if it was a boring game, like, you know, at half time. He'd say, lads, I'm bored. No one's trying anything. You know, no one's taking a chance or taking a risk. Just put yourself in the position of the 80-year-old season ticket holder who sat in the stands, that comes in and watches the games week in, week out, who's worked hard all his life and he's coming here to be entertained. Think about him. Do you think he's going to enjoy this game? Obviously not. So when you go out in the second half, I want you to, you know, try a long range pass, try a long range shot, do a risky ball, try something, do something, create something to try and win the match. And then apparently they did that and they went on and won the game. But yeah, I'm not being too critical on United on this point, because United have been crap anyway. So, you know, they're a work in progress. But Man City should have done better today. They should have done. They should have beaten us today. They had something to play for, and they had enough talent on that pitch, enough creative players to have been able to have fashioned something out of this game today, but they didn't even score. And I don't know, they didn't even look like they were going to score as well. I mean, Marmoush was unlucky with a long-range effort, which was actually quite scintillating, to be honest. But outside of that, I don't remember much. So, yeah, football's weird at the moment. It really is. It really is. We need a generation of Tottis or Del Pieros or hey, I'd even take an Antonio Cassano. Remember him? Or a Balotelli. Someone to make the game interesting, that'll just turn something out of nothing. Create something out of nothing and just out of nowhere just put the ball in the back of the net in the top corner. Then the goalkeeper's just stood there. But yeah. Hopefully things get better. But it's been a weird season anyway. Everyone's been crap. Arsenal hasn't kicked on. City have been crap. United have been crap. It's the crap teams that have been consistent. Of all the good teams, there's only been Liverpool that's been consistent. And that's what it takes to win the league, to be fair. You know, I'm not taking anything away from Liverpool. Fair play to them, you know. But I think there's quite a few teams that should have done better in the Premier League this season. Yeah. But hopefully next season's better. But what do you think? Do you agree with Gary Neville? Do you think everything's just over-reliant on tactics and sideway passing and tippy-tappy nonsense? And do you miss the individual players, the individualist players? And if so, tell me who were some of your favourites. Not just at United or City, but from other teams as well, like Barcelona and Real Madrid. You tell me. Thoughts in the comments, and the Big D will see you in the next one.